Okay, this video is a book review. The book is called Book Review of Politically Incorrect Guide to the Bible by Robert Hutchinson, copyright 2007. What's the deal with this book? It's a decent book. It's not a great book, but it's a decent book. I'm bored. I'm driving in the car, commuting, and so I always listen to an audiobook. Never listen to music or the radio. That's a complete waste of time. If you just read a book every time you're in the car, you'll go through tons of books. I pretty much read a full book every week just doing this. Okay, so what was good about the book? I like the quotes. Most of them I already heard them before, but it's still kind of nice to see them again. Okay, so basically, if you look at the smart people in the history of Western civilization, they all read the Bible. The Bible is sort of the foundation of Western civilization. Typical quotes, Charles Dickens: "The New Testament is the best book that ever was or will be written." And Charles Dickens wrote the best novel in the history of the English language, A Christmas Carol. Okay, Patrick Henry, he's, one of the great founding fathers. His quote: "The Bible is worth all the other books which have ever been printed." And by the way, when you study the founding fathers of the United States, they were very Christian. Much, much, much more Christian than is taught in school or widely recognized. People try to say Thomas Jefferson wasn't religious. You don't know the guy. He was read the Bible in 5 different languages. He had all these different versions of it. He was always trying to teach his family and other people about the Bible. He was a member of all these different Bible studies. He funded, giving everybody the Bible. He did a whole bunch of stuff along those lines. Here's G.W., the guy, the father of our country. I just read a book about him. Gosh, was he a brave and brilliant guy. He was in so many tough spots back in the 1776 days. So anyways, here's a typical G.W. quote: "It is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible." And I'd agree with that. If you really understand history and what happens in a country, you have to have a religious worldview, or you can't have peace. You'll always just end up with might is right, and it goes into nothing. Here's a typical quote by Joseph Stalin: "A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic. Once you get rid of religion and God, then there's no such thing as humanity anymore. We're just a talking primate." And that's sort of the pattern that's taught in the American grade schools, high schools, and colleges now, is atheistic Darwinism. And it's not a good thing, and people should not go along with that, because the goal of atheistic Darwinism is that whoever has the might makes everybody else into a slave, and we don't want that, of course. Okay, and now, so just in contrast, like with that typical Stalin quote, which is typical atheistic Darwinism, survival of the most powerful. Here is Matthew Gospel: "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows." Now, of course, Shakespeare said that a lot better than the Gospel wrote it. There's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. But you get the point. Every individual life is of value. And I also love the old Ayn Rand quote, the most important minority is the individual. And if you have individual rights, then everyone else will be fine. And that's what we should go by instead of all the modern nonsense. Okay, John Adams. "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people." Yeah, if people aren't ethical, they just lie and break all the rules, and we're kind of find ourselves quite often in that spot nowadays. Daniel Webster: "Education is useless without the Bible." And that's what I say about medicine. The reason why medical research has turned into a joke is because it's no longer Christian and it's no longer ethical. The big pharmaceutical companies, the big food companies, they just buy the journal, buy the scientists, and then publish stuff to advertise their product. And that's what most so-called scientific literature is these days. That's why you have to be smart to read the modern scientific literature and ask yourself all these questions. Who is funding the paper? That's the most important thing. You don't need to know statistics. You need to know who's funding the paper. Is this objective information? Okay, Andrew Jackson, one of the great presidents, he said, "The Bible is the rock on which our republic rests." Okay, and that's important too. It was a republic. That's an important thing. There's a difference between that word and democracy. Republic is a much better word. Okay, Horace Greeley: "It is impossible to enslave mentally or socially a Bible-reading people. The principles of the Bible are the groundwork of freedom." Yeah, that's why the Bible's not taught in school anymore. They don't want people to know it. If you read the Bible, you will push to freedom, and it's obvious, because all men are equal in the eyes of God. Therefore, they should all be treated fairly, and we're created in the image of God. Therefore, we're entitled to the natural rights. Okay, freedom, free speech, privacy, respect, etc., etc. Okay, the danger to mankind is not religion. You'll hear people try to say, "Oh, religion's a danger." No, the danger to mankind is communism, atheistic Darwinism. Okay, the book goes through all the usual topics like the historical validity of the Bible, the life of Christ, If you're interested in that sort of thing, I'll tell you, I've read tons of books on the subject. The best one by far is The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Just read that if you're interested in that. There's a great book, audio CD book, and movie on that subject, and that'll be all you need. I mean, there's tons more to read, but they're basically just detailed discussions of what he put in his book real concisely. And he's a writer, and so he's a good writer, Strobel. All right, Bible perspective on the family. By the way, you'll be amazed at how good the historical validity is for the Bible and the life of Christ. Once you start to read about it, you'll be, oh my gosh, compared to almost everything else in the ancient times. Okay, the Bible perspective on the family. This book goes through all of that and goes through all those issues. How the Bible promotes freedom. How the Bible and Christianity in Europe led to modern science. There's kind of like a trick narrative going on in the modern world to say, oh, what we need is real objective science, not religion. Religion, messes up science. It's not objective. The opposite is true. The modern scientific method of hypothesis and experiment and reassessment of the data, that comes from Christianity, from the Catholic Church, okay? That's where science comes from. And it's not a coincidence that modern scientific method, it did not arise from other countries. It arose from the Catholic Christian science. And there's reasons for that. Some of the reasons are, it says that the world is real. There's a lot of Eastern religions that'll say things like, oh, it's just Maya, you can't understand reality, it's all an illusion. Watch out when people start talking like that. That's also why Ayn Rand did not like Immanuel Kant, nor do I, because he tries to pretend, oh, you can't trust your senses, all this BS, okay? So it says the world is real. It's not constantly changing like pantheism. We're not saying that there's a soul and a ghost and a minor god in every living thing. It's not like that. It basically says there's a rational world made by a rational God in an orderly, logical way, and we are created in His image, and we can understand these things with effort. Okay, the world has fixed scientific laws. All right, and that's sort of. I did a recent video about the pioneers of neuroscience and astronomy and all the quotes of Kepler and Newton and stuff. They're all super religious, these early great scientists, and Michael Faraday and a whole bunch of other ones, and they sort of set the groundwork for what we would call modern scientific knowledge. So anyways, it's a decent book. I enjoyed it because I'm bored sitting in the car. It's not a great book, but it's a good book. Lee Strobel's Case for Christ, that's a great book. But anyways, hope you enjoyed it.